Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and this Python tutorial series. I am Aditya. In the last video, we saw the theoretical concepts of object-oriented programming. In this video, we are going to take it forward and create a Python application for employee management system. Okay, so we will see step by step by creating a class, attributes, methods, accessing them, and then going to inheritance, also file handling, and taking data from external source if required with a request object or a request function. Sorry, not the object, the request function. So we will do it step by step and maybe in the successive videos. So first, let's start by creating the employee class. Before I begin, I want to tell you that if you're doing any application, like whether it's web application, desktop application, in any language, it's a good practice to have a flow diagram and also a class diagram. I'm skipping that step, assuming that we already created that and we are moving forward, so that we can also save time on that. But it's a very good practice. If you want me to create a video on that, I'm happy to do that as well. So please put it in the comment section, and I'm happy to do a video on it. So now let's proceed forward, and now let's create a file known as employee.py. Now here, one thing to notice is when you do object-oriented programming in any language, whether it's Python, PHP, Java, C++, or anywhere, the practice is that you create class in separate files and you name that files the same way that you name the class. So if my class name is employee, my file name would be employee.py. The only difference would be my class name would be capital, like we're starting with the capital letter. Of course, I can also write here capital letter, or rather to avoid confusion, let's write it in a capital letter. I will say like this. Okay, so now we have our class, and now let's put the colon after this. So you have like this, name of the class, and then class, the keyword, then the name of the class, and then colon. Now after this, we will proceed forward by creating the attributes of this employee. So the employee has name, it has ID, it has salary, and it has a role. So let's create that. So we will say name, ID, salary, and role. Initially, we will assign them some default values like this. So ID would be a string again, salary would be 0 as it's going to be a number, and role will be again blank. So once we have our variables, now the next thing to do is to create a constructor. So what is a constructor? So once you create or initiate an object of a class, so if you remember, object is nothing but the instances of the class that we use to access the attributes and methods of the class. So whenever you create the object of the class, the first function that gets called automatically in any language is the constructor function or the constructor. The constructor is nothing but it's kind of like an initiation of that object with its attributes. Okay, so let's see how it works. So in Python, we write constructor. So writing constructor in languages differ from language to language, but so now we will stick with Python. So in Python, we write it like this, def, and then double underscore, init, and then double underscore. Okay. So if you see, the way of writing function is very equivalent to writing constructor is very equivalent to writing a function. Actually, it's a function only, but with a special name. And this name, you have to follow it as it is. You cannot change this. So it will be def, double underscores, init, double underscore. The first parameter in this would be the self. If you are coming from different programming language, you might have seen there is a this pointer. In Python, it is self. So if you are new to this concept, so what does this self does it? It helps us, or it is used to access the variables and the methods in that class. So it's as good as saying employee, this self is the pointer to the employee, and if I want to access employee's class name, then it's like self name, something like that. Now in this constructor, the first variable to pass would be, the self. The next one would be our arguments. My first argument would be the name, ID, salary, and role. Now these things, they are very different, or they have nothing to do with these things, even though the names are same. Why? Because these things will be something that we will receive from the user after we create the object or initiate the object. Also, if I don't define this, that's fine. It won't throw me an error here. Now, next thing to do is assigning our variables, class variables, the value of these that we receive from the user. So our self.name, now this self.name equal to name means, self means employee's attribute, which is name. That name will be the name provided by the user, or the name coming from the object initiation. So this is known as instance variable. This is known as user defined variable, or we have a variable or the value provided by the user. So this is the instance variable. So again, we will do the same thing for ID. So self.id equal to ID. We'll do it for self.salary equal to salary, and self.role equal to role. Okay. Now let's create another function which will just print whatever we have written. So let's say def print details. In object-oriented programming in Python, every function, it's good to pass the self parameter as the first variable. So I will pass that here. And now let's print that we have got. So print. So sorry, I didn't mention this before, but if you want to print variables in the string in Python, the one way is concatenating it, and the other way is to just write F, then double quotes, and in this double quotes you write name, whatever it is, and then the variable you want to print. In this case, I want to print this thing. So I will say self.name. Oops, sorry, self.name. I can now print it on a new line as well. Like after this, if I want to print on a new line, I will say \n, and then I will say something like ID, or let's do role, and we will say self.role. Okay, so instead of closing this and putting plus sign, writing self.name, then again plus sign role, then plus sign, something like that, we can write it in one line like this, and we can say, so name, and then whatever value provided by the user, and then the new line. So the role will be printed on new line, and the role provided by the user. So now let's see how it works. So we have our class ready. Now to use this attribute of this class, we need to, function of this class, also the attributes actually, we need to create the object. So I will create an object here, emp. You can give any name, that's not a problem. You can give employee or your own name or any person name, that's fine, it doesn't matter. So I will say emp, and in this I will say name of the class which I want to create the object. So this is employee. Now you see, if I go over here, I have given two round brackets, because once I give this round brackets, this constructor will be called, and as this constructor is expecting some value, we need to pass value here. So I will say my ID, let's say 1 2 3 4 5 6, salary, let's say 20,000, and role equal to, let's say, owner, something like this. And now how to print details, like I want to access this function. So it's very simple. We have our object after and have these values being assigned. Now we will just say object, which is emp, and then dot. So dot means I can access now all the properties and functions of this class. So I will say I want print details. So I'll say print details, and I will just pass it as it is. If you notice that self and self over here, I haven't passed it here as well nor here as well, because you don't need to do it. It's a Python variable, and Python knows that if it is blank, that means it will just ignore it. So you don't have to worry about it. All you need to worry is the parameters that you have provided or you want to pass. So once that's done, let's run this code. So I'll say Python. Now in this time, I'll say employee.py, employee.py. And if I run this code, I get role name and name Aditya, role owner. I'm getting this because I have space over here. And if I remove this space and run it again, you'll see name is Aditya, role is owner. So what is happening is once we initiate the object, it goes to this constructor. This constructor then take these values like whatever we have passed, and then it assigns it to its instance value. Okay, suppose if we didn't have this, suppose if we didn't have this as well, and if it was just an empty object like this, if we just say here pass, so pass is to just like pass it, and if we are not writing any code, we can just write pass. Now if I run this, it will throw me an error because self.name and like employee don't has any attribute name or a role. And if I remove it from here as well, and now if I do it, it will give me blank because we haven't called the constructor with assigning any value to our instance variables. Okay, so if I now just remove this or go back again to its original state, then we will see the values. Also, if you notice, I'm not defining it anywhere here. This is because the constructor will define it for us because we are already defining it over here. So we are defining it as an instance variables, and instance variables are accessible for all the methods of that class. Okay, this instance variables values differs for like they are different for different objects. So for instance, suppose I have this one now. Now let's create another object. So if I create another object, let's say this time I create object say emp2. Here also I create emp2, and then I can write here, let's say my nickname, and I will give the different ID, and here owner I will make it admin. I can also change the salary, that's fine. Like I can do something like this. And now if I run this code, you will see like this is for the emp2 and this is for emp1. So each instance has its own attributes, has its own states, and has its own, like whenever it calls the function, the functionality is associated with that object only. Okay, so the print details for emp2 is printing this, while for emp1 it is printing like this. So it's just different printing with, sorry, same printing with the different value. So now as we have this, now let's take it a step forward by assigning or writing more functionalities in this. So my employee will, like this employee class, there will be a function to set the salary to, or rather to update the salary, because we are already setting the salary here, so we can update it, or rather we can pass it a default value of zeros, or no need to do that actually, because then we have to switch the salary there, and or like if I do like this, that's fine, but if I do it like this, then I have to switch the salary and something like that. So what we'll do is we'll just have a def and we will say update salary, and we will pass here self and the salary provided by the user. So I will say like salary from user. And now all I need to do is write self.salary, which is our instance salary or class salary. And then I have to assign this with value of salary provided by the user. Okay. Now let's also, after updating, let's print the salary. So we will say salary is, and we will just say self.salary. Now let's do this. We have the details for emp2, so we are printing it over here. Now let's update the salary for emp2, emp2 dot update salary, and this time as we don't have to pass self, we just have to pass the value. So here I will say update my salary, this salary from 60,000 to let's say 40,000, something like this. Now if I run this code, you will see the salary is 40,000, but here if I print the salary as well, so if I say -n salary self.salary, And if I go here and just comment this and now run this again, you'll see the salary was 60,000 initially, and then we updated it to 40,000. So this is how you can also update the variables. Okay, this thing is known as setter function. So because we are setting the value, there is another function which is the getter function where we get the values. Okay, so the function name can be anything, but the functionality it does is setting and getting, something like that. So setter is setting the value, getter is getting the value. Now let's write a getter. So if I say def return, or let's say get salary. Okay, and here I don't need to pass anything because I just want salary for that employee only. So all I need to do is just say return. So return variable, return keyword or return word is for most of the languages is the same. It just returns the value that you write after it. So if I say here self.salary, it will just return the value. Okay. Oh, I need to pass self here. Yep. It will just return the value. Now the thing is, it won't print this value. It will just return it. So to print it, we have to just print this function. So let's see how to do it. Now once I update the salary, or if I do like emp2 dot, let's remove the print from here. And let's do like this, new salary. So let's take it in a variable and then get salary. Okay, and then we will print this new salary. So we will just have that thing over here, and instead of self.salary we will say new salary. Then we will tweak the message by saying that updated salary is, you don't need to do it, but just doing it optionally, just to like say this is updated salary. So if I run this now, it will say updated salary is 40,000. So the salary is getting updated here, that is getting being set, and here we are receiving it. So we are getting it. So this is getter and this is setter. A getter function should always return a value, as the name suggests, while a setter function should just set the value.